if there's anybody out there deciding whether to tell their kids about a diagnosis or a problem that will affect them, I would say absolutely do. Whether it's a divorce, whether it's a terminal cancer diagnosis, whether it's a financial issue, etc. If it's going to affect them, try to be honest with them. Find a vernacular, find a way that it works in their world, that you can explain it to them, that it will make sense to them, but tell them, always, always tell them. They are incredibly smart, and kids just, they soak up everything.
Yeah, kids are remarkably resilient, and we don't give them enough credit for it. And we don't give them enough credit for how much they understand, given the context, right? How much they understand. Like we just assume they're kids, they don't get it, they're not ready for it, they wouldn't understand. But there's a lot that they actually do get. And there's a lot that they can, in their own experience, create context around, and have an understanding for themselves that I think that they deserve, because I have to remind myself this all the time. I'm not raising kids. I'm raising adults, right? Because eventually that's the goal, is for my children to be model citizens, to be great adults, right? And so I have to start somewhere teaching them that adulthood, and shielding them from everything or not sharing things with them doesn't really do that, right? It prepares them to go out into a world completely naive of what may really happen and things that they may actually face. So it is really, really important to have those conversations. Doesn't mean that they're comfortable. It doesn't mean that you're going to have all the right words, or that you may not have to do a redo on a conversation because maybe you said something that didn't really land the way you wanted to.
All the
Or that
time.
you're not going to, or that you're not going to have to continue to have the conversation. I think a lot of us shy away from the conversation, one, because we don't want to have the initial one, but two, because we know it's a lengthy conversation that's going to have to continue to happen. And there's going to be things that come up that we have to go back in and have uncomfortable conversation again. And for most of us, we want to have peace, and we don't want to have confrontation, and we don't want to have uncomfortable conversations. But the reality is, as a leader, you kind of have to. It's kind of your job. It's kind of your duty. Yeah.
And just think, if you don't encourage your kids to ask questions now, the adults they become won't ask questions and will always do as they're told, no matter how bad, no matter what that is. And that, to me, is one scary future. If you've just got obedience blindly above all else because it's uncomfortable to talk about things, because that's what they were taught as children, well, what sort of life is that? What sort of humanity is that? What sort of future is that for us? It's the same as they talk about, you have to discipline kids to be kind. I don't mean take an iron rod to them or a belt to them or anything along those lines, but you have to set clear boundaries. You have to say no means no. You have to tell them that if they overstep this mark, there will be consequences. Kids need that as much as they need open conversations. They need to know where those lines sit. They need to know basically what real life is like, but at a scaled down version where they can fail at it. If they ask a silly question, you as a parent aren't going to rip their head off like a boss might in future. But if you give them the space to ask a silly question, they work out what silly questions are. They work out when something makes sense. They work out how to do things in a way that they can understand. They work out how to ask the right question to get the answer they want. And unless you give them the space to do that, unless you give them a bit like bowling, unless you give them the guardrails in which to practice, they will never get better at it. They will never become those model citizens, as you pointed out. So, yeah, I could not agree with you more.